This is Our View, brought to you by the proud members of the Washington Federation of State Employees, the people who work for you. It's often said that the best way for working people to get ahead is to work hard, come together, and speak up. But there's a concerted effort to undermine that right, a right that wins wages to sustain a family and sustains public services. These self-serving special interests want to make it even harder for working people to speak up together. Working people throughout the Northwest and all across the nation, all the way to the United States Supreme Court, are getting the word out. Don't be fooled.
There have been forces, the many right-wing forces for many, many years, the National Right to Work Committee and other groups out there who have been going after the labor movement in general, both public and private sector. We now see that effort renewed by the Koch brothers and others, the Freedom Foundation in this state, and they have cobbled together a Supreme Court case, U.S. Supreme Court case, the Friedrichs case, which is really intended to be a dagger in the heart of public sector unions, to really destroy the ability of public sector unions to function. As we know now, unions really make a big difference in helping public employees deliver public services. The unions play a key role in helping that, and this case will hurt tremendously the ability of public sector workers to collectively get together and improve public services for the public in general. The Friedrichs case will come down probably by, at the very latest, the end of June. And no one really knows where the court will be. It was decided in 1977, many years ago, in the Abood case. And in that case, it was a unanimous decision. No one thinks this decision will be unanimous, but no one really knows exactly what the outcome will be. So, there's an array of possibilities of what the impact on public sector unions will be. Many forces in this country have been trying to take away the voice for private sector workers for many years, and they've been fairly successful. And now you see that same effort going after public sector unions, trying to destroy the voice, and that will have a dramatic impact on public services in general. If you look at the states that aren't unionized around this country, public services are not in high demand and aren't delivered in those states. I mean, this case will affect many different types of workers, workers who work in state parks, workers, healthcare workers, many different types of frontline workers, EMTs, nurses, and so it will have a devastating impact on the workforce in general on states across this country. There's no question. I mean, in the heart of this is about public services, about the delivery and the quality of public services. The forces out there who don't care about that, they would be happy if these services were outsourced. They don't care whether government provides them or not, or they don't use many of the services and therefore don't care about the quality.
March is a good time for many workers to think about where we've been and where we may be going.
Greetings to all my AFSCE sisters and brothers across our nation. Did you know that March is Women's History Month? I want to thank you for all that you're doing in public service and in building our union. Together, we're making history, fighting for real family values like pay equity, paid sick leave, and raising the minimum wage. Through our union, we're lifting up women and families every day. I'm proud to say our union made a big difference for me in my life and for my family. As union women, we have the power to change the course of history if we stick together. This month, I'm reminded of one of the icons in the labor movement, Mother Jones, a tough organizer who fought for what was right and made no bones about it. "I'm not a humanitarian," she said. "I'm a hellraiser." We are on the side of the angels in fighting for women's rights and workers' rights, and we shouldn't be afraid to raise a little hell to get there. Be active, Be proud, be union.
And for Women's History Month, Donna Brazile, often seen on national news programs, had this for a recent AFSCE gathering.
Let's not forget that the labor movement itself was forged in the sweatshops, and many of those sweltering there, of course, they had a different kind of heat than they have in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere. They were women, they were young girls, not even teenagers. It was a sacrifice of young women, recent immigrants, mainly in the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory in the fire of 1911 that galvanized the labor movement and forced the formation of a committee of public safety and the passage of legislation protecting workers. That's our history. That is the history of who we are. Their sacrifice, their willingness to organize against great odds. Their fight is still our fight. And throughout the history, the labor movement, women have courageously taken the lead. Think of the traditional women's jobs, secretary, teachers, nurse, all these professions organizing, unionized, demanding dignity and respect for the workers, as well as proper wages and benefits. As women, you are the largest bloc of voters in this country. And in the last election, a 2% additional turnout, primarily by women of color, gave President Obama a 112 electoral vote advantage. Come on, 2%. That's your sisters, that's your neighbors, that's your co-workers. That's power. That's power. We give it away. The Koch brothers need to know that not only will you wear your colors, but you are going to wear them all the way to the ballot box. But we have a choice. We can make our voices heard, have an impact on public policy, or we can abandon the cause, abandon our legacy, abandon our duty to our families and our fellow citizens. But will that happen? No. Yes, the corporations, the bloated big businesses want us to give up, to feel helpless, to drift along and accept whatever tidbits they deign upon us, to drop. They want us to feel beaten and not worthy of the victories that we know come when we get out and vote, the victories that come when we go to the table and we organize. They want us to move aside. But are we going to move aside? No. That will not happen. That will not happen.
Our clothing factories have been replaced by what's termed supply chains. The factory today is nothing more than an office providing marketing. The supply chain is what leads from the store where you make your purchase back to the manufacturing point, which is most often in a third world country with cheap labor. This is a challenge for the International Labor Organization as work continues to get the workers who make our clothing a decent wage and safe working conditions.
So supply chains basically refer to brands who have outsourced everything in terms of production except how it looks like and how to sell it. Everything in between, brands gave to other companies what they call the supply chain, their suppliers. So factories in Bangladesh and other countries were producing for these brands. We as a trade union movement think that while that might be a choice of business model, that business model should not give negative consequences to the workers of those factories. Because the reason that brands outsourced the production part from their operation is because they still wanted to have control on the price, the quality and the lead times, but they wanted to get rid of all the other annoyances out of their own business practices. And often the one paying the bill of getting the same quality, the same products at ever lower prices is the worker themselves. It's not necessarily the factory owners. And we think that needs to stop. We think that that curve needs to buck, and that we can get again a transition in this apparel industry to make the workers in factories, in supply chains, have decent work and enjoy full labor rights.
A leading labor educator, Bill Fletcher, told a recent Seattle gathering that the labor movement has to use new tactics and identify our allies in the community if we're going to win.
So specifically, what does the union movement need to do? I want to identify 4 things. Strategy, internal education, creative tactics, and strategic alliances. Strategy, we have to be fighting for worker power industrially and geographically. So it's not simply about bargaining strategy. It's about a strategy that really is fighting for power. But in order to do that, the issue of internal education becomes really important. Now, I don't have to convince you of this, but I do have to convince many people in the rest of the movement that do not take internal education seriously. They look at internal education at best as websites, sometimes as newsletters, other times as speeches by leaders. I mean, every so often a flyer. And then, if they're feeling very generous, they'll bring in a labor historian to give a talk. But they're not dealing with real education, which with adults is a dialogue that takes place, an engagement. We're not dealing with 5-year-olds, we're dealing with adults. We're dealing with people who have points of view that need to be respected, irrespective of whether we agree with them. But we need to engage them. And internal education is pivotal if we are to move the movement forward. We need creative tactics. A lot of what we do is, simply put, boring and also ineffective. When you have strikes where people are walking around in picket lines looking like the Lost Battalion, and have no impact on shutting down production, we have to look for more creative tactics. And again, that's where I go back to what the right has been so brilliant at. And we need strategic alliances. We need to be thinking about who really are our friends out there, who are the other forces in society that actually have an interest in us winning, and how do we work with them, not just for a particular battle, but thinking long term.
You've been watching Our View, brought to you by the members of the Washington Federation of State Employees. We remind you, when you accept a paycheck for your hard work, you don't give up your rights. Thank you for watching, and please join us again.